So let's imagine this is a wild hypothetical. Um, let's imagine that what led to this society project we're doing is that there was a huge like world disaster, hurricanes, all this stuff, and all of land got covered in water except for North America. So alls we have in existence in the world besides water is like Canada, the US and Mexico. But
And
everything
some dead.
what's that? Yeah, well
Some.
you were on a boat or a door like on Titanic and you floated over here, so you're good. Um but like so everything man-made is destroyed. We don't even have something that we think of as like borders existing. All technology is destroyed. It's just humans wake up and there's whatever, there's a couple 100 million humans and they're exactly where they were except some people from Bulgaria are over here now. And everything has to be decided. There's no laws, there's no whatever. So our group, for whatever reason, is the group creating laws. So one thing that I think would be very important to figure out is why would we want there to be a certain amount of governmental authority over a certain set of land? So if we have all of North America, would the best thing to do be split it into three chunks like Canada, US, and Mexico? Or would it be better to have something like how we might view the US government in charge of Canada and Mexico? Do we want to look at situations where like Mexico right now has a big like drug problem? Would Mexico benefit from being controlled by the US or Canada or something like that? And then if we do view it that we think it makes sense to split it up by land size or population size, then we'd want to say, okay, so if we have Canada, U.S., and Mexico, do we think that this splitting it up into states with states having separate power, do we view that as kind of silly and unneeded, or awesome and we want more power for states? So, how about Jerem? You go first.
Hmm. Um. Well, I do see some value in splitting things up in the same way that like uh you don't have Mr. Walton managing all of the Walmarts. Um. But uh, I do see value in the having a CEO of Walmart, right? Where you have all these people. You can have like managers of the different stores, and you can have like regional managers, and everything's kind of split up. But at the end of the day, uh, the sort of rules of Walmart are created by uh, the CEO, and I see that similar to like a country um, where yeah, it can be beneficial to have states or to have different sections of land um, just for like management purposes. Um, but I think overall, like um, there should be some power that can like overturn like something that a state would decide.
Okay.
I don't know if that answers the question, but
No, it does, and it's a tough question. I have no idea where I stand on it. But yeah,
Yeah.
Dillian, what do you got?
So before I answer, I want to ask you two questions about your hypothetical.
Mhm.
The first one is the easier one. What is the population that survived? Like how many people?
Um, let's for fun. Let's just go with the actual amount. Um, North America. I'm guessing like 300
Oh,
million,
everybody
right?
survives in North America.
Yeah, we could imagine a bunch died and then some came over from elsewhere. Um, let's just say 100 million,
100 million.
which is
And the
about the
second
population of the
question,
U.S. Yeah.
yeah, the second question is, if people survived, I think there are technologies that are more resilient to, I guess, cataclysmic events than people are. So I'm not sure if all technology will survive, so
You
there
have to
should be
accept the
some kind of.
hypothetical.
It's like you don't have hammers. Hammers were destroyed, and axes.
Um, yep.
It's like a steel axe with a steel pipe was destroyed, but humans survived.
We'll just say all paper, computers, all remnants of laws are gone, and so everything's going to be decided again. So we're all deciding, like, we're essentially everybody's living in the wild, and we're all going to be deciding, like, okay, let's get back to having a society with structure. Because for a little bit we could say, hey, let's just live out in the wild and be a free for all. But then once there's all the murders and the rapes and all that stuff, we'll say, like, okay, we need to have some laws and have a place where the bad guys go. So yeah, we don't have to worry about hammers and all that kind of stuff.
Okay, so I guess in a crisis, I would say it's not very wise to forcefully, intentionally force separation, but it would probably happen naturally. It would be more of a tribal society, I guess, if that happens.
Hmm.
Um,
What do you think the population element should be? Like, let's say everything was destroyed except Bulgaria, since you're used to Bulgaria, um, and you have 7 million people there right now. Do you think that if people wanted, are there different states or anything like that in Bulgaria?
um, they're no,
Okay,
I
so if
mean
you
they're
if you
they're
commit a
regions.
crime in, like, so regions, if you commit a crime in one region and then you do the same crime in a different region, would it be the same outcome, same punishment?
Yeah, it
Okay,
would be.
okay. Yeah, that's slightly different here. Like here, we have different things like in
Yeah, I
different
know.
yeah in different states. There's different things like age of consent or age of various different things happen depending on where you live. Okay, so what if in Bulgaria, um, some people there wanted to split it off into four sections? Would you think it would make sense to have an overarching government that has a set like a set constitution that has the country's overall laws, but then leaves a portion of the laws up to the four separate states? Or do you think there's no reason to do that?
I think there's no reason to force that, but if it happens to happen, then maybe just for avoiding conflict, if it's going to be too much, we could allow it to happen. But I don't see a reason to force that.
Gotcha. Okay. Really quick, Miranda in the comments here said, I think that undecided over 20% should speak to working out the proposed law a little further. Nothing should be passed with undecided of 20% because 1 out of 5 don't understand. Um, don't understand or don't have an official answer. That's a very good point as well. Um, Though I guess the only problem is if somebody felt undecided enough. Well, I'm just trying to think because, like, I wouldn't want my undecided vote to help something pass. But yeah, no, that's interesting. But that's awesome that this person shared their thoughts because I'm hoping at some point this project can get big enough to have like an audience of a couple hundred or a couple thousand people that want to participate as citizens and propose laws themselves. And I think it'd be cool if like the laws we vote on are what people say when they look at our list of laws and go, well, what about this? So thank you for participating, Miranda. And then Contrarian 420 also has thrown out a bunch of different ideas on laws. Okay, so Jerem, after hearing what Dillian said, do you have any other thoughts on splitting off what's allowed? I guess we can look at like the Canada, U.S., Mexico element. If right now all the lawmakers are gone for all of those, and us 30 people are deciding what we want to do, let's say we had it up to a vote. Do us 30 control the U.S.'s borders, or would we say like we might as well just control the whole continent?
Um, I mean, kind of like I said before, I think borders are kind of just help for like management reasons, but I do
Hmm.
think there should be like I think like we should control at the end of the day we should have power over Mexico and Canada. Yeah.
Mm. Okay.
I
Yeah.
mean, I think in political situations like this is just might makes right. So if we can't do it, then we're not gonna do it. Like
Hmm.
control them. It's like it's a freaking apocalypse, and just deciding what how much to control. It's
Yeah.
like either nobody's gonna listen to us, or
Hmm.
if we can do it, we will do it.
Yeah. Well, we can also imagine like what if somebody wanted to do it today? Like what if the US said like imagine when the different countries joined World War II to stop the Nazis and the Japanese. Um, Now, in one sense, a bunch of different countries were saying, you guys get to control yourselves. You're your own country, but you can't kill 6 million Jews. So we're going to come in and stop you. So we kind of have this overarching, like similar to like a federal law for a country. There's a planet law for you can't kill 6 million people of one race, and but everything else goes. Like the U.S. doesn't try to control Germany's other laws. Like so, would we find it bizarre if a big country like the U.S. like what if today? What if right now President Biden comes out and says, we've decided we are going to overtake Mexico. If they want to join us, that's great. If they want to fight us, we'll fight until we own it. And then now on the map, the U.S. will be all of the U.S. and Mexico because we think they have too much of a drug problem and need better drinking water or something. I don't know. And like, so what would we think about that? I think that kind of thing might help us figure out what we'd want to do in our own.
So I personally wouldn't be in the favor of the U.S. in doing that. It would be hmm, it would be, I guess, even a worse excuse than Russia invading Ukraine right now,
Okay.
because their excuse is that they're denazifying it, which, yeah, I don't know how true that is, but it's definitely a better excuse than, well, they do too many drugs.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Um, and is the reason why we would be against the U.S. doing that to Mexico or Russia to Ukraine is just because it already exists? Like what if it didn't? What if the area that's Ukraine nobody owned for some reason? It was invisible to everybody until now, and then some people wandered on it and said we want this, and then somebody from Russia wandered on it at the same time and are like, oh, we want this. Is there a reason? Like, should any of this be based on population, anything like that? And another thing that I want to add to that Contrarian 420 said in here is that it kind of sounds like we're talking about representatives because so like in the U.S. There's 50 states and every state has 2 senators, but every state has representatives based on population. So there's like a certain number of how many people a representative represents. And then so a small state like Rhode Island would have like, I don't know, like 5 representatives, but something like California would have like 50 representatives. And so essentially there's a lawmaker that is going to be voted in by the public based on the amount of humans, and the humans will vote somebody in based on their personal wants, the laws they want to see change. Um, do we see a reason to have separate states where the representatives affect that state and then the state affects the country? Or would we just want a country, the United States, where there's representatives representing chunks of people But like if somebody was proposing to do away with states and the U.S. was just the U.S. without state borders or anything and no state control, every law, if you shoplift in California, it's no different than if you shoplift in Texas. Like every state, like the representatives will help shape the country, but the states won't have their own laws. Would we vote in favor of that or against that?
Um,
In favor of states having their own laws,
Yeah.
or yeah, I would say against that. I think that um, separation, I guess, separation when it comes to enforcement is a good thing because it's basically impossible to manage so many people at once. But when it comes to law, it should be based on morality, and it should be, I guess, kind of universal. But when I think about it further, it's more like you would be the reason you would have this separation. I guess a reason you would have the separation would be to kind of experiment with laws and see which works better. So you can have, regions with different laws, and it's not just a monolith.
Hmm.
But
Yeah, like so say since you're used to Bulgaria,
we're
say
set on the ethics. I guess it would be better to have a more unified thing. But if we're not, and we need to experiment, then I guess we should be separated.
yeah, like what if Bulgaria was if you picture it split into four, just like picture a
Yeah,
cross right in the middle. If it just so happened that the population in the northeastern side of Bulgaria happened to all be against legalizing cocaine, they really just don't want cocaine to exist in their area. But the other three were totally fine with cocaine being legalized. And then in like the southwest chunk of Bulgaria, let's say they were super religious and like didn't want gay marriage. They didn't want, they wanted their laws to reflect their Bible or something. Like, would we see reason to say, okay, these areas get to make their own laws as long as there's overarching laws that say you can't sacrifice babies to the sun gods and stuff like that. Or
yeah,
is
yeah.
there,
That makes
yeah,
sense.
yeah. Like I like the idea of there being separate states and state laws, and it's a good way to experiment too. Like a state can try something out. Like people talk about legalizing different drugs. If one state just tried out legalizing cocaine, we could see what happens. Like how many kids will it affect? How will it affect crime and stuff like that?
Don't
And then
you
if
have
it if,
one
if it goes
state that
horrible,
basically has almost all drugs legalized? Not sure which one it is, but I think I've heard something like that.
yeah.
Do
Uh,
you?
I'm not sure. I know weed is legalized in probably about 10 of the 50 states, but I'm not sure about other drugs.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, it's tricky. I don't know where the cutoff would be because so many laws are just based off individual morals and they change over time. And it seems like, at least from my mind, they change in a positive way over time. Like we can see when slavery ended, we can see when women started getting rights, we can see when in the 1960s they started letting interracial marriage happen. In 2013, gay marriage is legalized. It seems like there's a lot of progress happening, but in any given day, anybody's reasoning for something is just based off their individual morals. So, in a
Yeah,
sense, I want a government to say, no, you can't let your religions dictate what humans do and whatnot. But, like, any of our moral opinions can be viewed almost as a religion of sorts. It's just not one with a deity. So, yeah.
yeah. I changed my mind on this. I guess if you're not in a crisis, Uh, because you gave that apocalyptic scenario, and I guess if you are in a crisis, you would want to be a little more unified. But
Mm.
if you're not, then you would like to have different states that experiment, and then if something is, if people see that something is really bad or really good, then they're gonna pass it as a more universal law across states. The It's gonna go up on a, what do you call it, federal level, or
Mhm.
yeah.
There are a couple good points here in the comments. So Miranda said, if technology is null and void, all of it is kind of moot because communication will limit jurisdiction.
Yeah,
So,
that's a big thing.
it probably would have to be a thing unless people were riding out on horses or whatever, which we don't want in our society.
I mean,
Um,
we're still gonna be a very tribal society if all
Yeah.
technology is
Well,
gone.
we could imagine that we create technology right back. We get everything back and running. The idea of the hypothetical was just to paint a picture of like why there's a new set of people creating laws. And then the contrarian 420 said, must there be any representatives at all? With tech, you could allow all the citizens to vote without representation. So, what if the government imposed the laws, but instead of there being senators like there are now, I don't know what they call senators in Bulgaria. What are they? What are you?
Uh, um, so senator, I guess,
Just the lawmaker title.
ministers.
Okay, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
In the UK, it's prime minister, something like that. But uh, but anyways,
yeah, we just have an AI decide everything for
yeah.
us.
Well, what if we had so a group of people that were the government that made sure everything was enacted, but just how everybody can vote on president? Do either of you think that every citizen should just vote on everything? Like if we were voting on gay marriage or marijuana or all these things, would we want to leave it up to like either the majority or any percentage of just every citizen, or do we think it's important to have lawmakers?
No, I think we should have representatives. Um, it's the like in the same way of like there's like uh the whole example of like um you have the sailors who uh sails the ship, not the people on the ship. Um,
Mm,
I think yeah, we want to have some representatives that actually like know what they're doing.
yeah.
Um, yeah,
Yeah, no, I completely agree because, well, I
That
think,
actually know what they're doing.
yeah, well, and it's tricky to know exactly what that means. But in my mind, if there is a profession that is a politician, you go to school for it. Usually it's law related. You go to law school, you understand how the law works, and your life is dedicated to that. Like you have an understanding of it that your average person doesn't have the time to. I have a little too much time on my hands currently because of my setup I have, so I'm able to research all the things of politics. But your average person working full time, probably, unless it's their biggest passion and hobby, they probably don't have time to look into foreign affairs and look into all the different like how tariffs work and um, all the different elements of taxation and different things. And so for a random person on the street to just say, oh, my vote should mean something. Oh, our taxes are going to funding NASA. I don't even care about a NASA. Okay, no, there. And and so to have somebody that can like look at the world and look at our goals as humans, to recognize NASA is always my go-to because I feel like your average person would say, like, why waste any money on NASA? But but our politicians can recognize that we can care about our future, we can care about innovation, we can care about finding life elsewhere, and these various different things.
And also spend 10 times more money on the military.
Well, yeah, yeah, and that's another tricky thing. Maybe we should have better politicians or different politicians that would spend less on the military and more on something else. But what I can tell you for sure is I wouldn't care if somebody told me $1 million was spent on the military or $1 trillion. That number, I couldn't get it through my head what that means. Like, is that too much? Is that too little? How much is our military needed? Like, it's just such a big thing. Like the idea of this thing, like if we were to be invaded the way like Russia's invading Ukraine, a military seems pretty important. But knowing the dollar amount and having to compare that to the taxation amount of your country and then comparing that to the debt amount of your country, these are just numbers that us regular citizens can't really think through. Which is why when I'm passionate about a political topic, it's usually something that's, first of all, more philosophical and ethical, like something like circumcision or abortion. I want to learn more about value of the like the military and costs and stuff like that. But I like if somebody asked me like, hey, do I think they should spend 1 billion on the military or 82.5 billion on the military? Like I'd be like, I don't know. What are they buying? What are the outcomes? How is it different this year from 10 years ago? And so I think it's very important to not have random people that like us three and the rest of our group probably care more about politics than your average random person on the street. And for them to decide, oh, let's pull funding out of the military and put it into schools. That's probably a great idea, but I don't know if we know that. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sort of content with the, I guess, the mechanism which gives the average person some kind of power over, what's decided or what's not decided, which is, I guess, the supply and demand. You can boycott things, you can buy things which you agree with, you can do activism, you can, I guess, sponsor people that do activism, but it's not. It, yeah, it's quite a bit, but not as much as I would like to, in terms of power each person has.
Mm.
Uh, one example I would give to the U.S. is the government bailouts for dairy. It's basically impossible to boycott dairy because dairy farmers are incentivized to produce more and more dairy, and the government just buys it. And I think your government buys it in the form of cheese, and they just store it in giant caves.
Mm.
And it's yeah, that's pretty bad. But once
Yeah. I
once
don't know
it's
all the details, but I know it's connected with schools too. Like billions will be put into dairy and then the milk cartons will be sent to schools and it's basically kids are forced to take a milk and if they say they don't want it, they're just told to throw it away. There's a weird subsidy with the US and milk for sure.
yeah, it's so I don't know too much about it, but as far as I know, it has to do with the Second World War, where milk was seen as the superfood, and it was produced in greater amounts. That's when the government subsidies started coming in. But when the war ended, there was no such demand, and the dairy farmers weren't happy with that, and so the government just kept on subsidizing them and expanding dairy for, I guess, no good justifiable reason. It's just the situation was like this, and once you started it, it's very difficult to stop. So it's like everything in the US is capitalism except the dairy industry, that's communism.
Mm. Yeah, that's interesting. Well, luckily in our society, we can decide if we want subsidies to go towards anything. That'll be an interesting topic. Okay, we got Travis in here. I always forget Travis isn't part of our messenger group. And so when I said if anybody else wants to join, that didn't go out to him. So Travis, if you're willing to join Messenger to be part of our group on there, that'd be great. But emails are totally fine. There's a few people that aren't on there. Um, oh,
Travis, you're
oh,
muted.
hello. Oh, there he is.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can
Yes.
hear you now. Hey, before we get Travis, before we get your take on the state versus federal, I want to get your take on something we talked about earlier. We were talking about so initially when I was tracking the votes, it would just be whatever had more yes or no's, and then it popped in my mind that undecided should count as no's because you in my mind you'd want the 51% of the vote to be 51% of people saying yes or no to something, and so I imagine somebody staying out wouldn't like help a positive vote. But we have a difference of opinion here. So Dillian was saying that at least 50% of the voters have to say yes or no. And then Jerem was saying that it doesn't really matter what percentage, that the undecideds just don't count as anything. So if we were voting to pass something like, say, outlawing gay marriage, if one person said yes, no people said no, and 29 people said undecided. It's the idea of, do we pass it because the majority of yes or no's was yes? And what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would say that undecided votes, I would just count that as basically the same as not casting a vote at all.
But how would that so should the majority be 51% or more as a yes or a no vote, including the not? So like in that case, out of 30 of us, if only one voted yes or no and everybody else was undecided, would that one person essentially make the law or not? Also,
yeah, I would say so.
okay, another thing to keep in mind that I think is a good point that Miranda says in the comments is if 20% or more of us senators vote undecided, that it either means that the proposition is misunderstood or not known about enough, that maybe the vote should be halted until people are decided. What would your thoughts be on that?
Yeah, I mean, if a bunch of people are confused about the, oh, I guess it kind of depends because if a bunch of people are confused about the proposition, then I think it makes sense to halt it. But if people are just voting undecided because they just don't know what their opinion is on it, even if they understand the proposition, I wouldn't say it should be halted because of that.
Okay. Yeah, maybe there can
My
be a
problem
third.
though with yeah.
Oh, go for it.
Well, my problem with counting undecided, having it like count against a proposition is, I take like casting an undecided vote to basically be saying, well, I'm not really expressing a view one way or the other, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't really make sense for it to count as no. Like if you wanted to cast a no vote, why not just cast no?
Yeah, I guess I imagined it as a way of specifying, especially if we make our votes known, like it can feel better to say like I'm like I can accept I don't know much about a certain topic, like let's say something like puberty blockers. I might lean one way or another, but I don't know enough about it that I want to kind of sit out. But if it's affecting if something should be legal or not, I guess I just feel like if currently there's no laws, if we just have everything's free for all, then we can decide, okay, we want murder to be stopped. And we'd probably have 100% unanimous, pointless murder should be stopped. But once it gets into the ideas of outlawing things and saying you are not allowed to do this, like gay people can't get married or something like that, I guess somebody that was undecided that didn't want that to become illegal would probably just put no anyways. But I guess I imagined there has to be like a stronger like majority push to make something illegal? Not necessarily more than 50%, but I guess I imagined it would be the 51 or more percent of the amount of us, the amount of people that are voting on every topic. But I'm also very accepting of counting undecided as not voting at all.
I would say it should be 51% of, or over 50% of the people who cast yes or no votes.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And if everybody's aware of that, then and even at the end of everybody voting, what would you think if I reminded every undecided person, if you want your vote to affect it, then you could choose yes or no, or like, have you looked into it far enough to decide a vote?
Yeah, I mean, putting just like letting people know what the policy is. I think that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like counting it as no is unfairly tipping the scales against the people who are in favor of the proposition.
Yeah, which I
Because
wouldn't want to do. The only reason I lean towards that is because it would just be tipping towards something not passing in that moment. But it wouldn't be the other direction. It wouldn't be like, I guess it potentially could be, but creating a law might be different than removing a law.
I mean, this thing would essentially remove the option of being neutral.
Yeah, for some reason I
Then
imagine
undecided
maybe that's how it
loses
worked,
its
but
meaning.
yeah. No, fair point. Yeah, fair point.
I don't know what you mean it would remove the option of being neutral.
I mean,
Oh no, he
because
meant what I was
undecided-
saying. He was agreeing with you.
Undecided is basically no if that's a thing, and therefore, if you have no option to be undecided, it loses meaning. It's a no. So yeah, I'm agreeing with you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to answer a question here in the comments from Contrarian 420. If your representatives in a vegan corporation approached you and said, "Look, we have shared mission, just pass some laws that make it easier for the company to operate, and we spread veganism," it's like, if I could pass these laws, they would probably already have been passed. And if there are some new laws that I agree with, I mean, something that I haven't thought about but I agree with, then I guess I will try to pass them. Yeah.
Okay, Travis, I'm going to catch you up really quick on what we were talking about because I think you missed the opening of this. But we're basically just deciding if it's important, like in the U.S., if there was a proposition to not have states anymore and just have everything be federal law, would that be good? Or the hypothetical I gave at the beginning of this was there was a natural disaster. Everything was destroyed except North America. So we had Canada, U.S., and Mexico, but all man-made stuff was destroyed. So there's no laws. We have the memory of what borders used to look like. But if us 30 people were deciding, hey, do we want to just control this entire continent? Do we want the land that's like the U.S. and we'll let whoever's in the spots of Canada and Mexico do their own thing? Like, do you think there's reason to have things split up in where California will have different laws than New York City, or do you think all laws should kind of cover everywhere?
I don't think that I necessarily have a view on that.
Okay.
That I favor one over the other.
Gotcha. Well, let's look at something kind of simple to look at, like Roe v. Wade. So when Roe was passed, it was federally no states could prevent a woman from getting an abortion before, at the time of Roe, it was 28 weeks. And so when it got overturned, now it's up to the states. So some states say 6 weeks and some say up until birth. do you, do you think that it's good that states can each control their own laws like that, or do you think there's some laws that should be that if there were a big controlling government, that it's actually better for them to put those laws through?
I mean, I definitely do think that I'd prefer there to be federal laws in some cases, laws that apply to the entire country. But that more depends on the specific law than like the specific issue.
Okay, well, let's say Roe. So you want abortion to be a cutoff of approximately 12 weeks. Is that a topic that you think it would be good if the whole country had that law, or do you like, is that a type of law that you think would be best left up to states?
Yeah, I mean, if it's that law, then I'd prefer it. I'd prefer that be implemented nationally.
Okay.
But say that, say that we had a government in place that wanted to federally outlaw abortion at conception, then I'd probably prefer each states be able to, like, some states be able to have it up to 12 weeks than like having it all states it be at conception.
Yeah, like that idea is kind of why I think things being up to states is important, because like it couldn't be up to a state or federal based on the outcome being what each of us might like. Like I like the idea that the federal says free speech exists. You have you have free speech, and the government can't control your speech. And I think there's some things like that. Like if one state decided, let's say Alabama decided that if somebody makes fun of your mother, you're allowed to kill them. I think federally it should be decided, no, you killed them. We're stopping Alabama from letting from letting people kill people because they made fun of their mother. But I like the idea of almost all laws being control, like every smaller groups having control. I don't like the idea of it just being communities, like 100 people can decide their own laws. But as long as it's within reason, like if people had like open carry laws, or you know, I don't know, just different laws on like taxation.
Well, I was speaking to Jerome about this the other day. It's like it's just going to depend on what the outcomes are. Like if the federal government wants to pass good laws and implement good, if they want to pass laws that are good and implement it nationally, then I'd be in favor of it. But if they want to implement bad laws nationally, then I'd prefer the states have control of that issue. Like
I
I
think
don't
that just naturally means that you want the states to have control then.
Yeah. So who decides what's good and bad?
me.
Me.
Okay,
True.
so you're the basically make Travis the state.
Me too.
Dictator.
Yeah.
Well,
I
yeah,
think,
because
yeah, go for it.
well, I mean, it's because it's like I don't really like if you take the example of marijuana, for example. Like I prefer having states be in control of that and having some states illegal.
Oh,
Oh.
you might have cut out. Are you still there?
In control of the issue and like just banning it nationally and having it illegal in all states because the federal government has banned it and it is enforcing a federal ban. But I'd also prefer like a national legalization of it over like it's legal in some states and it's illegal in other states.
Yeah, I wonder if it has to just be a certain level of importance. Like, in my mind, I don't even know what the number would need to be, but like if every group of 5 million people basically had their own state and they elect their own people and whatnot, But I'm also okay with like the size of states that exist now. I like the idea of people having their own laws, and as long as everybody in the state is aware of what the laws are, but then the federal government would be able to veto certain things and say it's official, no slavery, and then each individual state wouldn't be able to do that. But I can't like make people agree with my stances. So like if one country or sorry, if one state wanted to outlaw gay marriage, like I think that's dumb. I don't think any laws should be based on religion or deities. Um, but what's going to happen if we let the government, if we let the federal government decide something like that? What's going to happen if the federal government's majority becomes the opposite of that? And then they decide, okay, no gay marriage at all. At least if it was left up to states, there would be constantly like 40 of them allowing it, and people can decide where they want to live. Not that I'm saying gay marriage should be up for a vote. I'm glad that seems to be unanimously decided. It's just kind of religious examples are probably the easiest to use. That a majority whim could change people's freedoms, and I don't like the whims of the majority changing freedoms.
I mean, I guess in a situation like that, you'd have to take into account just like the practical likelihood of, like, we've already had same-sex marriage legalized nationally for a decent amount of time now. It's pretty popular among the public. Is a like conservative government that comes into office really going to want to spend their political capital on like outlawing it nationally?
Yeah, probably not, and hopefully not. But yeah. Okay, so let's say so you said you didn't have too strong of a stance on it, but let's say that so we got Canada, U.S., and Mexico, but like it's just random people scattered after this disaster. There's no laws, there's no like real separation other than our memories of it. And the 30 of us are getting together and deciding, do we want to control all of North America, or do we want to pick a piece of land to control? Do we want to control one state or the entire U.S.? If you just had to decide off the top of your head right now, Travis, which way do you go?
Wait, so we have no laws at all?
Yeah, so like aside from the laws that we've us 30 in this project created, the hypothetical is like we the everything's destroyed and the only land that's left is North America, and us 30 people are deciding, hey, we feel like we have like people will listen to us, so we're going to be the senators, but we don't have a set amount of land. Like we could say, do we want to we basically get to decide. We could decide if in the same sense that today, like let's say Joe Biden could decide, I want to take over Mexico and make Mexico part of the U.S. because I think we can end their drug problem and this, that, or the other, and like human trafficking or something. Do you have reason to be for or against there being larger numbers of people and land controlled by smaller group?
By the way, I just wanted to say I think this hypothetical is it's not the best for this purpose. I think there would be a better hypothetical because just the devastation that you want to use for having lawlessness is it just brings so many more complications to it. And I
Mm-hmm.
guess a better hypothetical would be, let's just say we're 30 somewhat rich people and we want to buy a piece of land and tell a bunch of hippies like, do you want to live with us on this island? And
Mm-hmm.
we're just gonna make our own laws and have a country.
Yeah.
and now we're making the laws.
Yeah, either way, the hypothetical doesn't necessarily matter. It's just figuring out for our society, for the society project. I think you just have to imagine like the real world. Like, would we take issue with something like the whole world becoming one country? Would we take issue with a couple different countries combining to become one country? Would it be even better if the U.S. became 100 states instead of 50 states? That kind of thing.
I wouldn't have a problem with the whole world becoming a single country.
Okay. And then if that were the case, would you think that the majority of the laws would just be official for everyone, and then separate areas could decide a few things like marijuana taxation, that kind of stuff? Or would you be leaning towards in favor of all the decisions are for everyone?
Um, I'd probably lean in favor of like doing it nationally.
Okay. Okay.
You mean everything's like a monolith?
Yeah, I think generally I would lean in favor of like the federal government having more power.
Hmm. So I guess one thing that we discussed that is kind of against that, it's in favor of having things separated in states, which initially I was on your opinion, but then I kind of changed my opinion. If you have separated regions where you have different laws, you can essentially experiment with laws. And if, first of all, if you pass somewhere a law that's really detrimental and basically does some irreversible damage, it's not gonna be everywhere. It's gonna be a little more isolated. And the other thing is, you have more diversity of laws, and you can see what's good and what's not, what's actually good in practice and what's not. And then, if you see something that's really good, you just pass it on. Uh, I guess a world level, and if it's something really bad, then you pass a law against it on a world level.
Oh, but
Well,
that actually fit into what Travis said too, because if it's a world decided thing, then the government of the world could decide we're going to do a trial in this little county or this state like area, and then if it goes well, then we'll pass it in the world. Because if you let the world decide at any point, then the whole thing is a world choice.
I don't get.
You were
So
saying like the state thing where I was saying like if California decided to legalize cocaine to see how it goes, and then if it goes horribly and a bunch of kids get cocaine and there's a whole bunch of addictions and health problems or something, then we can go, oh, that didn't work, and then outlaw it. But if it does work and it like it does away with a lot of drug issues like criminal issues, and it doesn't seem to be affecting kids at all, then maybe New York can have it as well. But if it's just the idea that California tries it and if it works out good, the U.S. legalizes it for the whole country, then essentially the California trial isn't allowing states to make their own choice. That California trial was a federal government finding a guinea pig. So if you're gonna say that there is a good or a bad, and the federal can decide it, then it's all kind of the same thing, unless you let separate individual states always be in charge of lesser things, lesser
yeah,
removals
I
of
mean,
freedoms.
I think that separate individual states should be in charge of the lesser things, but we should learn, I guess, from each one of them. When
As long as the
there's
federal
something.
isn't learning, as long as the like I live in Oregon, which is the state right above California. If we saw what California did with cocaine, we could go, "Oh, we learned from it. They did the trial. It was a success. So now we're going to allow it too." But if the federal allows it federally, then I don't think it's playing out how we're imagining with the learning.
Yeah, but there might be some issues that you wouldn't want to let certain regions decide for themselves because they're just so, I guess, bad. You wouldn't want them
Yeah.
anyway. Like,
Yeah, like if there was a world government, we wouldn't want to let Saudi Arabia do female circumcisions, right? Something like that.
yeah, or just I guess Saudi Arabia or maybe New York decides that they'll have witch hunts and they want to legalize that and they want to burn women alive.
Hmm.
And it's like maybe there should be a law that prevents a state from making such a decision.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Travis, were you going to say something?
No.
Oh,
So
it's Jerem. Sorry.
yeah. So I think this is why we give like the federal government more power. So like you can still have experimentation, right? Like if Colorado is like every Wednesday the fire department gets free pizza, like sure. Um and the federal government can kind of just sit back and let all these states sort of experiment with different things. But um we can go back to like Walmart, right? Like different Walmart stores can experiment with different ways of how to like shelf products and how to store them and stuff. But then ultimately the board of directors or whatever at Walmart can come in and say, actually, you can't put raw meat with uh, fresh produce, or Uh, so we can do that with states as well. It's like you see someone doing witch hunts, and it's like, wait a minute, we're the federal government. We have the power to overturn this. Um, yeah. So if the question is like who should have more power, then yeah, the federal government, and that doesn't mean that we can't experiment.
Or like how much power. So let's look at the things that we've voted on. Like, should the federal government decide things like, let's say, trans surgeries? Like, should each state be able to say like one, like, so in my state in Oregon, a 16-year-old or a 17-year-old, so 16 and up, can do top surgery without their parents' permission. So they're not legally an adult yet, but they can go and do it without their parents' permission. I'm sure that most states that's not legal. So is that the type of thing that would be a statewide thing where the only federal things would be you can't murder people and you can't cut people's body parts off because of your religion, and essentially the things that are like physical harms would be just federally out, but something like letting in a gray zone area of age, letting people decide thing like should that be up to a state?
I think that the decisions that the federal government should make are the things that are basically beyond any reasonable doubt.
Okay.
Yeah, and everything else should be up to the states, I guess.
Let's see. Travis, what are your thoughts on that?
All the laws that I voted in favor of should be enforced nationally.
So,
Here, let
maybe
me
you
let me
should
say which ones
propose.
I think I would. So, okay, so abortion, I think that should be national because that's about an actual human. Circumcision, national. Death penalty, national. I think almost all of these. Okay, I'm with Travis. I I want all the ones.
I don't think controversial topics, I mean, very undecided topics should be national.
Um,
So
yeah,
abortion, it's a very polarized topic.
I think for me it comes down to the physical element of it. Like so the ones that I wouldn't care and I'd leave up to states would be marijuana, cocaine, um, probably something like the female topless nudity thing that we voted on. Um, because most of the things we voted on are actual physical harms to humans or letting children decide to do something permanent. We didn't really vote on many like little relaxed things. The thing that we're currently going to be voting on after the later talk today is if somebody punches somebody in the face on the street, like I wouldn't care if California said a punch in the face gets you a year in jail, and then New York said a punch in the face only gets you a week in jail. That would just be the people can let their state know what they want, and laws can fluctuate. But if somebody is doing like some Waco thing where there's like a cult that is actually like killing people or mutating, like cutting off the arms of children or something, then the government goes in and says, you guys are violating federal laws. You are like harming humans. And yeah, the idea of deciding what should be in stores or what should be labeled and that kind of thing just seems like a state to state for me.
I guess something to kind of bring up is it like could be beneficial to have a bill of rights or something, where you have uh yeah, I guess certain things that are off the table, and the federal government is the one who uh enforces it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And then
but
but the
again,
interesting thing is how do we decide what counts and what doesn't count?
yeah, here I think it should be everything that's beyond any reasonable doubt should be there, and everything else that's being debated shouldn't be. It shouldn't be on a state level. Like
So what is
abortion and murder. Murder should be on the federal level. Abortion should be on the state level.
so do we just take that to mean like popularity, like the amount of people that agree that murder is wrong is like so high that we can put it into our constitution or our bill of rights?
Yeah,
What does beyond a reasonable doubt mean?
I think so. When somebody tells me beyond reasonable doubt, I usually think of something like what a scientist would say, something like the gravity exists beyond any reasonable doubt. The Earth is not flat beyond any reasonable doubt. It's a sphere, and it's like again, we shouldn't murder each other, or we should not torture. You cannot take somebody and torture them for weeks without murdering them, and then uh, expect that have that be legal in one state and not in another state. Rape is. Sorry, I don't know if I'm allowed to say that on YouTube.
It's fine. Well, here's an idea I have. Federal should be anything that we could view as a mutual benefit, and state would be anything we'd view as moral. I was talking with Travis about this yesterday, and so when starting a society, if you agree, you don't
Wait.
kill me, I don't kill you. We have these laws that say if you kill somebody, you go to jail, because we all get a mutual benefit if we all agree not to kill each other, not to punch each other, not to do all these handful of things. But anything that's a separate moral thing where somebody can say, I think it's wrong to smoke marijuana, that could be, it depends on the popularity of your state. And I think that would even come down to something like animals. So we here all want to outlaw the harming of animals, but that is a moral decision. That is not a mutual benefit. We can't convince the animals, okay, lion, you don't kill me, I won't kill you, or cow, you don't kill me, I don't kill you. We don't get a benefit from them not being able to talk with us. So we can state by state decide we want it to be illegal to brand cows, but that's a moral decision. And I think the idea of a federal one could be we just all unanimously agree, religion or not, we all benefit from anything that's mutually beneficial.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So I don't. No, I don't. You're making this like separation between like moral and then mutual like benefit, and I don't really see a difference there. Like it seems like once we're talking about laws, we're talking about what we ought to like to do, and that just gets in the realm of like moral philosophy. Um,
Yeah, I agree. It's like there's no law that you can pass that would have either a mutual benefit or a mutual harm. That it's
What about killing? I don't think killing needs to be moral at all. If we were all living out in the wild and could just do whatever we wanted, people were killing, raping, doing all the things, and then a group of like 10,000 people got together and said, "We're going to start a society, and our only law is going to be that there's no killing, and not for moral reasons. I don't care if people are dead or whatever, but I don't want to die." And you don't want to die. If all of us agree we're not going to kill each other, then we all get the mutual benefit of surviving. And the people that agree to it and break that law, they're going to go to jail, which will be the deterrent from doing it. I think that's probably, even though we want more laws, that is not based on morals whatsoever. And that is a great start to a society.
I don't see why we should limit federal laws to mutual benefits.
I don't think we need to. I just think that that's an interesting place to start, is to say, like, something that's a moral decision. Like, various people have their religions and various people have their moral opinions that might look like religions. But something that is a clear mutual benefit to every single living human adult just seems like one that making that federal law just seems clear. Where the rest of them, I'm not saying they shouldn't be. I'm glad that there's federal laws of various different things like gay marriage and whatnot. But then there's some that I don't agree with because I want people to have more freedoms. Like right now, I think it's illegal in the U.S. to have a sign on your restaurant that says no blacks allowed. I think that's stupid. I think if somebody wants to destroy their business by having no blacks allowed and choosing who they'll serve, well, not only will capitalism just destroy the hell out of that company, but I just think people should have their freedoms to hire who they want. Let's say they only want to hire women because they hate men. Go for it. If something becomes a big enough issue, we'd handle it the way we probably did, like, say, civil rights time. But outside of that, if it's just individual people having personal beliefs of being bigoted and that kind of thing, I don't think that should necessarily be a federal choice.
Yeah,
so,
yeah. I don't think that should be legal.
yeah.
Gotcha.
But if I had to separate mutual benefit from morals, then I guess I would actually reverse it and I would put the morals on a federal level because morals are universal and mutual benefit. A law can have a certain effect on one region and then have maybe a more negative or positive effect on another region.
I would say the other way around, because people that want to circumcise female babies, that's a moral decision. They think that's the morally right thing to do because of their religion. And so to have a federal law that you must, even if you're against circumcising your female baby, that you must do it. And if the government comes to check up on your female baby and they're not circumcised, they're going to borrow your baby for a second. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know.
Wait, so what would you say about those types of laws generally? Like, what if we wanted to implement a law banning that? Would you say that falls under moral or mutual benefit?
I think that falls under mutual benefit for humans. Sadly, it doesn't for animals. But I also think that should be stopped, and I just hope all the states would do that. But yeah, so for humans, the mutual benefit of we all agree we don't kill each other, we all agree we don't mutilate each other, we all so basically physical harm, death, and enslavement. Those are all things that anybody of the human species wouldn't want, and if they did want it, then it wouldn't be against somebody that doesn't want it, if that makes sense.
I'm not
Yeah,
really
but
seeing how that's a mutual benefit.
yeah, you see, Carson, it's enslavement might be a benefit for those who are potentially going passing a law against enslavement might be a benefit for those who would be enslaved, but it's not a benefit for the slave
No,
masters.
no, it is. So the slave
It's not a
master is
mutual
also
benefit.
protected from being put into slavery. It's a mutual benefit because out in the wild, if you're a slave master, then you're probably better off being the slave master out in the wild than joining the society I'm referring to. But if everybody comes to the society I'm referring to and recognizes everybody gets the mutual benefit of they don't have to worry, am I the slave master now, but in 10 years I will be the slave, because everybody would have the mutual benefit of we don't enslave each other, we don't physically harm each other, we don't kill each other. Now it is complicated with children because there's not a mutual benefit there. The child is not saying, the child is unable to say, I won't harm you, you don't harm me. So that becomes more of a moral issue. But then I don't know, it's complicated and you have to add in elements of.
I don't think it's possible to separate benefit from morals because I guess we base morals on some kind of a benefit, and all morals have some kind of a benefit, and basically everything that has a positive or a negative benefit would fall into morals if it's going to be passed with a law. And yeah,
Yeah, again, I'm not saying that there shouldn't be moral decisions that are federal. That's totally fine. I can just see an easy separation because there's not much of a difference between morals and religion. Now, I personally, I ascribe to Sam Harris's take on this, where I think there are many moral things that are practically objective, and it wouldn't matter if every human disagreed with it; it would objectively be a fact.
beyond any
Wait, so
reasonable
you're a
doubt.
moral realist?
In some cases.
Uh oh.